of the best ways to overcome any objection is by telling a metaphor or telling a story. And so I had a guy come in and he said, Matt, you know what? I don't want to buy any of your stuff. I just want your free stuff, is essentially what he said to me. So I didn't want to engage him there because we were too chunked down. He had to come back. I had to do a profile and then come back and then give him the free stuff that ultimately he wanted. But obviously, when I went home, I had to come up with a story. And so as I was thinking about it, I was thinking about, what are other examples of this? So I started thinking about, he sold copiers. And so he was a copier salesman. And so here's a story I came up with. He came back in and I said, you know what? Have you ever went into an office and they had an old copier sitting in the corner? And you knew that they were wasting time and wasting money utilizing this copier. But the owner of the business said, hey, I know what you're here for. Old Bessie in there is the best thing ever. I'm not buying your copier. But you knew that you could help him out. So you figured out a way and sold him a copier. A couple weeks later, you came back and the owner was so fired up and thanking you because he said, wow, I didn't realize how bad old Bessie was. That thing was costing me time and money. That new copier is awesome. Thank you so much for selling that to me. Did that ever happen to you? And he said, yeah. I said, that's exactly what we're doing here. And so what a story does is it overcomes that critical faculty barrier. Like I said, an objection hits that true false of the brain that doesn't allow information in. So you have a presenting objection, and a metaphor will allow you to overcome that objection and get you to a solution. And so you can see what I did with that client, with that gentleman, is I was able to pace and lead him through a sales process and kind of trade resources through the story to get him to my side of the equation. Now, I encourage you to go out there and learn stories and metaphors. It's beyond just the handling objections part of this training, but on my e-learning platform, we share with you, and in my book, Story Selling, how to practice and put together stories. So I don't want to chunk down and how to put together a story here. That's on the e-learning site, and it's also in my book if you're getting this training not on the e-learning site. So essentially, though, a story will help you bypass the critical faculty barrier, and ultimately what a story does, it puts somebody in a light trance. It bypasses that critical faculty barrier so you can install a new belief or attach to their current belief. So really you're bypassing that part of the brain that's saying yes, no, and true, false, so you can get past that no and false statement and bypass the critical faculty barrier, overcome their objection with a great story. You need to use case studies. Now, I do tons of presentations, and one of the critiques I got a couple years ago from my wife, she came to see something new that I was selling, and she said, you know what, you need to use case studies. And here's why case studies work, is they overcome the objection of, I don't trust you, or I trust you, but this won't work for me. And so when you can bring a case study into your presentation, or whether this is one-on-one, or it's a simple example that you use on the phone with somebody, or a case study in a presentation, you will help overcome those objections that I don't trust you or this won't work for me. And so what types of case studies do you utilize? Well, what you need to do is think about what types of clients do you want to attract. And so, for instance, when in my financial advisory practice a couple years ago, what I was doing is I was doing a ton of seminars. And so I was doing cold seminars. People were coming in for Social Security, learning Social Security. But during that seminar, I'd give 3 case studies of people that I've helped. And what I did is I utilized case studies for somebody who was rich, who had $3 or $4 million. I utilized a case study with somebody who had $1 million to $1.5 million, and I utilized a case study with somebody who had $500,000. I utilize case studies for people who don't have enough money to retire. I utilize case studies for people who have enough money to retire. With those people who have enough money to retire, I utilize case studies that they want to spend every dime of it, or I use a case study of them actually leaving it to the next generation. So what I want to do with those case studies is show that I'm there for everybody, that I have a solution no matter what your problem. And so when you have a case study, you overcome that trust objection and that objection that this won't work for me. So really what you have to identify, what types of clients do you work with? What types of clients do you want to attract? And can you build a case study around that type of client? Now, there's a couple things. Now, build a case study around maybe a client that you've helped that fits that avatar, or build a case study that you know how you could help that avatar. So either way, don't get caught up in I've never helped that avatar before. Get caught up in what can I do and what kind of plan case study can I put together to help that type of avatar so I can overcome that trust objection or I don't believe this will work for me objection. And the best way you can do that is through the presentation of your product is by showing them a case study that fits them. If you're doing a stand-up presentation with an audience, you obviously are going to have to go through 3, 4, or 5 case studies. They don't have to be long. They could be 30 seconds to a couple minutes. And if you're sitting down with somebody, you got to understand what case study to pull out to overcome that trust objection. Or I trust you, but this won't work for me. So you can do this during your presentation, or if you get the objection, chunk up and you get an objection that might seem more specific, you chunk up to the objection of saying, is this a trust objection or this won't work for me objection, and then pull out that case study to overcome that objection. So how do you get that I don't have enough time or I don't have enough money? You have to contrast value with the time or the money. And so I use this example a lot. My wife, about 5-10 years ago in 2008, she was selling big box items to hospitals. It cost $100,000 to $300,000 for these big box items. And she'd go to the hospital, but they didn't have budgets to spend $100,000 or $300,000. So what they were doing is saving money at the time. So what she went in, instead of having a conversation around her product, she had a conversation around how much money do you need to save, and let me see if I can help you save that with my product. And so ultimately what you have to do is stack your value so somebody's willing to pay any price, whether that be money or time. You know, a great way to do this, so the other day we were sitting down with somebody at lunch, and he said, you know what, I don't have any time, I'm buying another building, probably not going to get this to do a month or a year and a half or 2 months later. So basically it was a BS objection just pushing us off. So what I did is I got out my yellow pad and started drawing out some numbers to show how valuable taking action with me would be. It would help him create more time and create more money. So what we did is I started laying out with him how much I'm going to save him on taxes, how I'm going to put that money back into his pocket, and how I was going to do this in under 5 hours spread out over the next 3 months. Now it's a little more detailed than that, but anytime you get the time or money frame, or objection, you have to contrast that with some sort of value. You have to show them how you're going to create more money for them or more time for them or how you're going to create more value for them. And so however you do that, it's a little bit different with every product, but ultimately you have to use the contrast frame. So when you get the time or money, it's limited. It's a limited universe frame. And so you have to come out and say, here, but we're going to create all this value for that little spend of time or that little spend of money, and show it how it's more valuable than they're currently spending their money and spending their time. And that's really what the contrast frame is you have to list everything, all the problems, all the goals you solve, create all those hot cognitions, so when you go back, you can turn them into contrast frames, stacking your value and how you accomplish their goals, overcome their problems for this little piece of time or this little piece of money from them. I want to share with you 3 awesome questions I use in just about every one of my sales meetings. Now, this is an objection handling video training. However, these questions should be used in the early part when you're interviewing somebody. Now, there's all sorts of different types of sales out there. Sometimes there's sales when people don't know why I'm there, and I have to give them a little bit of a pitch before I ask questions. Sometimes if I give that pitch, they give me an objection. I got to chunk back up to asking these questions. So however it fits, I'm using this as the objection handling and how to use these in handling objections, if you will. And I call this the questions to reframe. And so if they're chunked down, you could chunk them back up by asking these questions. Here's the first one. If we went out 1 year and looked back to today, what would need to happen for you to feel 100% happy and successful? Pretty simple. Now, I got this from Neuro-Linguistic Programming. Since then, I understand a gentleman by the name of Dan Sullivan wrote a book on this. I forget the name of it. But ultimately, it's a very, very easy question. If we went out 1 year and looked back to today, what would need to happen for you to feel 100% happy or successful? You're going to get some great answers on there all around the problems and goals. So remember, if you get an objection, you're down here, you're chunking them back up to the problems and goals to nominalize that objection. So here's another question. What are your 3 biggest goals that you're trying to accomplish? You insert the time frame. What are your 3 biggest goals that you're trying to accomplish this year? What are your 3 biggest fears? Now, obviously, you can tie this around your product. It doesn't necessarily need to be, about life or something esoteric. I mean, it could be if you're selling lawn services. Well, tell me, what are your 3 biggest goals for your lawn? What are your 3 biggest fears? What are your 3 biggest problems with your lawn right now? If we went out 1 year and looked back to today, how would you want your landscaping to look? What would need to happen for you to feel 100% happy? So this is all plausible. Don't get so logical on it. These are all plausible questions that'll chunk them back up if you get some resistance. So if they say, well, hey, you know what? I don't like the price of your product. Your price is way too expensive. Well, let me ask you a quick question. If we went out a year from today and we look back to today, what would need to happen for you to feel 100% happy? What are your 3 biggest problems with this? What are your 3 biggest goals that you're trying to accomplish? And then tie your product and chunk your product back up to the problems and goals. Those 3 questions are the most powerful questions, and they're so easy. I do recommend that you use them in the beginning of the sales process, but I've had myself there where we end up pitching the product, and then we're down in the details, and then you start getting resistance. Well, a way is to chunk back up to these 3 questions will get you back to problems and goals that are centered around your client, so you can get them and hit their dopamine and their norepinephrine. So 3 simple questions to chunk them back up to the big picture. The agreement frame is one of the most powerful language patterns you'll ever utilize, and all you have to do is master it. And it's so hard to master it because we always want to be right rather than rich. And I want you to start thinking about in life is how do I become rich, not how do I be right. And so how do you use the agreement frame? Let me give you an example. Let's say your wife or your husband comes to you and says, hey, you know what, I think we should take a vacation. I think we should go to the most expensive place, the 4 Seasons. We should fly there. It's going to cost $1,000. It's going to be this expensive vacation. And they keep going through all this. And the whole time you're thinking, heck no, we're not spending the money. We're not doing this. Instead of disagreeing with them, say, honey, you know what? I agree with you. That would be absolutely fantastic. And then tell them whatever you want to tell them. Tell them how you were thinking about going on this other vacation and describe that vacation and sell them on that vacation. Instead, we always want to be right rather than rich. And so when somebody disagrees with us or we disagree with something they're saying, we want to start matching them point for point. What I'm saying is agree with them, nod your head, and then take them somewhere else. Somebody's talking about your product. Wow, your product, it has bad service. It's too expensive. I don't know. I've heard people say they had problems. All you have to say is, you know what? I can agree with you. And then just start saying all the value you want to put in there. Put whatever value you want to put in their wheelbarrow. So really, when you agree with somebody, you can take them wherever you want. The thing is, we usually say but. We usually say no. All you have to say is, I agree with you, and. When you say, I agree with you, and, you can take the conversation anywhere you want. If you say, I don't agree with you, but, you cut the person off and you put them in that no part of their brain and you start creating defenses. I want you to be rich, not right. Start using the agreement frame everywhere you can in life, and really, honestly, just go out and practice it. Anyone you talk to, just say, I agree with you, and then say whatever you want. Try it out. It's going to work. Use the agreement frame and the word and you'll have success nominalizing objections.
I wanna get restless.